Hello and welcome. I'm Roger Ream, and this is the Liberty and Leadership Podcast, a conversation with TFAS alumni, supporters, faculty, and friends who are making a real impact in public policy, business, philanthropy, law, and journalism. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Ron Hart, author of a widely carried column that combines political observations with his sharp wit. It runs in over 50 news publications. Ron has had a successful career in the investment world, where he was regularly ranked as a top investment advisor, and he is a proud TFAS alumnus. Ron participated in a TFAS program in 1981. He served on our board of trustees and continues to be a generous supporter. Today, Ron and I will discuss his diverse career, how he approaches writing political commentary, and some other topics. Along the way, we are sure to have a few laughs as we tackle some important subjects. Ron, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to start at the very beginning, the beginning, that is, of Ron Hart. Where'd you grow up, Ron?
Still haven't really, but Columbia, Tennessee, essentially, small town. My dad was with a policeman and with the railroad, and he got transferred there, and it was a great town. It's part of Nashville now, big part of Nashville. It's, you went to Vanderbilt, you understand what has happened with Nashville. It's growing like crazy. The other thing about Nashville now, you're like this, Roger, is that they Field of Dreams, build it, they will come. Nashville didn't build it, and they came.
They came anyway.
No infrastructure there, so that's usually I'm in Chattanooga.
Columbia's become a bedroom suburb.
Yeah.
It's appropriate. You were born. It was appropriate you were conceived and born there then, in the bedroom community. So
they had Saturn got there. GM came down with a lot of auto workers. Kind of changed it for a while, but it's a beautiful downtown. Very authenticity abounds around the town. So if it can maintain that, I think it'll be a nice bedroom community of Nashville.
How'd that upbringing in a small Tennessee town kind of shape your values, you think?
I was basic, maybe not Norman Rockwell, but it's more like a little bit, country and rough. And, our football team was half African-American, half, redneck. We got along really well. The school was, was average, it was pretty rough at times. I used to kid, we had the only high school paper with an obituary column. So it was, you learned pretty quickly. I sent my kids to private schools when I could, but I kind of regret in many ways I didn't go to some level of public schools, because there's a certain naivety about a kid that goes to private school all the way through, about people and who to trust, who not to trust, et cetera. So, but I think we all do it when we can. But I had a very good experience there.
Well, my father was a minister, and so I get asked a lot what it's like growing up as a preacher's kid, a PK. But you were a policeman's kid. Did that have some impact on? You growing up?
Yeah, he was president of the FOP. He actually went. He was part of Bull Connor's administration, or policeman for him in Birmingham, before he moved to Columbia, and he kind of got a bad taste of that a little bit. But he was a good cop.
Yeah, and there was greater respect for policemen back then than today.
I just helped start the Chattanooga Police Foundation, which supports police. You see what cities like. I lived in Atlanta after the Rayshon Brooks situation, and the city was torn apart. You saw what happened with George Floyd up your way, up the north, way up north when that happens with the city. So if you don't support the police at the margin, the city can fall apart. So we've raised some money to do that. And Bob Corker has helped us a lot here in Chattanooga. He was former mayor and U.S. Senator. And we got the Chattanooga Police Foundation started about 2 months ago to support the police. Let them know we have their back, short of anything egregious, of course. But
sure.
You have to have the police back, because they don't work for a whole lot of money. And when they step down, criminals step up. I saw it in Memphis, where I'm from, went to school there a little bit, and then I saw it certainly in Atlanta.
Well, let's talk about that. You went off to University of Memphis. Tell me about your experience in college. How was that? Did you have any particular courses that had particular influence over you, or activities on campus?
I think the ability to work and go to school is important. We all had jobs. We were SAs. I was in a great fraternity there, SA, and I'd say 90% of the guys in the fraternity worked somewhere. I worked in the clothing stores. So you worked your way through school. back then tuition was not near as high as it is today.
Yeah.
And my parents really weren't helping me much. Their view back in the old days was, you're 18, right when you get work, you're out of the house. So I got out and went. It was good. It was inexpensive, and it was a part, kind of a party school. I used to jokingly say they would, instead of tuition, they would have a cover charge every semester, and you were stamp your wrist and get in. But we had a good time. We learned a lot, and good group of guys, of which I talked to at least one of them every day.
Well, tuition was much lower then because they didn't need to have all these counselors on staff to help the students when they, felt unsafe and threatened by others, right?
Yeah, I'm on the board there too, and I see what you're talking about. There's a lot of pushback. The board's very scared, and every time we have a board meeting, we spend they spend the people that talk to us talk about how diverse they are, what they've done. They've got the first this, they got the first that, and there's no metrics around really what they're doing for the kids. It's just their own personal, virtue signaling about who they hired and what they did. And it got a little old after a while. So it is a university. It is a big university, and it's going to have the left wing, agenda there. And it's just, what do you do about it? I mean, just try to ignore it and grow strong from it. And that's where something like TFAS comes in.
Yeah, well, it's tough as a trustee to have a lot of influence. I know from experience I hear of other trustees, but I think the extent you can, ask the right questions at the board meetings, which I'm sure you do, and ask them about how much intellectual diversity they have on campus, in addition to all the other types of diversity they measure, and see what kind of responses you get to that.
Yeah, the outcomes with the test scores. I mean, no one wants to talk about those.
Yeah.
Because it's truly any woke corporation, right? If you become woke, then you don't have to talk about your earnings, your sales, your market share. It's going to be the detriment to corporations. You look at Target, Budweiser, of course, all these corporations that are trying to do this. It has not helped their stockholders. At the end of the day, should be about the stockholders. And when the left takes over any organization, as you've seen, academia or whatever, the outcome is never good.
Now, when you were a student there, you somehow heard about the Fund for American Studies program. I guess we were known then as the Charles Edison Memorial Youth Fund, hadn't yet changed our name. But how did you hear about our program when you were a student at Memphis?
Yeah, I was student body president, and Governor Sundquist had become a friend. Don Sundquist, who was involved with your board at some point.
Yeah, that's right.
Was involved, and he said, I had never heard of it, and he said, you ought to go to this. And so I ended up getting, I think, a Goldwater scholarship. You guys helped me out. And I think Don was clearly the influence. Ed Lancaster, I think, had gone the year before, the year after. My high school buddy who was at Vanderbilt, Ed Lancaster, went too. So, word of mouth a little bit, and a little bit of influence by the governor.
And how did the program influence you? You had an internship, you took some courses, you probably built some friendships that have lasted.
Oh, yeah.
During your career, but talk a little bit about that TFAS experience for you.
It was terrific for me, at least. A lot of good friends from there still, Sadler, and of course, Bobby Tudor was a real good friend. I got a job at Goldman Sachs out of school, and I ended up getting Bobby hired. He did a lot better there than I. He made partner at Goldman.
Yeah, he was a guest on a podcast I did a few months ago.
Yeah, sharp guy. He's done very well. He's been great for Houston, and Bobby's a great guy, and friends. Friends like that. I mean, a lot of good friends over time from the program. Tina Ben Eunice and other people of us stay in touch.
And you had an internship? Was your internship on the Hill?
It was with Bill Brock. Bill Brock, as people remember,
then senator, was that?
He was. Well, what had happened was, as they say, Carter, Watergate happened around this time, and then the Democrats swept the Senate. After Watergate, Jimmy Carter became president, and he lost his Senate seat in Tennessee, either Jim Sasser or Al Gore. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, I think it was Jim Sasser, as I recall.
Yeah, Sasser took his seat, and it was a purple state back then. And because we had Al Gore before that, and his dad, et cetera. So those old Democrats were actually Republicans today. But Al Gore, and then he later on. But anyway, so he was out without a portfolio. Bill Brock was, and President Reagan appointed him U.S. Trade Representative. So I worked there.
Ron, I never have asked you this. How do you develop your interest in what became your career in managing money and the investment industry? You said you took a job with Goldman Sachs, but what kind of, that was after business school, right?
Right. I got my MBA, went to work for them. Well, I just had a keen interest in it. I worked in the cotton business in Memphis, and I was not an Ivy League, MBA, which is rare for them not to hire Ivy League MBAs. So my boss sold out. He kind of brought me in the big house to run his money, and the Goldman guys called on him. And the manager for the Southeast met me and went to him and said, "You mind if I hire him?" And he came to me and said, "You got to do this." And I didn't know Goldman Sachs from A.G. Edwards or anyone back in the day. It just didn't register with me what they were. It was a big deal. But when I kept interviewing, they kept bring me back to interview, and I finally told them, I said, "Look, bring me back one more time. I need to clock in. I need to reach up and pat the pony on the nose." And so one of the stories that got around about the job thing was that they asked me how I was different than the rest of the Harvard and all the people that they had. And I said, "Well, I've been to a cockfight. I've seen a man bite a man's earlobe off in a bar fight, and I spent a night in the county jail. It's part of that. Other than that, not much difference." And that story kind of circulated around the hallways about the differentiation. You get in a tight situation where there's 5,000 people trying to get 25 jobs. You kind of have to differentiate yourself, and that truthfully was, I think, a differentiator. That and the test scores were good.
And when you got the job there, you moved to New York?
Yeah, the first year or two, you go to New York, and then the the southern region was in Memphis at the time, which ultimately became Atlanta. So going over there in the southern office back then.
Well, you've had a very distinguished career in the world of investing. I know among your honors, being named as a Barron's Top 100 advisor. In the course of your career, you no doubt witnessed tremendous changes in that business. A lot more government involvement, government regulation, no doubt a lot more bureaucracy and paperwork and companies to comply with that. Was that a major adjustment to you during your career?
It wasn't that way at first. I think Liar's Poker and some of the old books that Michael Lewis wrote kind of fully reflected the industry. It was rough and tumble. We did the best for our clients, and then it got so regulated that you really couldn't do the best for your clients. You had to really CYA all the time. So I saw what government overzealous regulation does for an industry, and it didn't help. In 2009, Lehman went under, and under the debacle, and the regulation blurred some fundamental misdeeds by people. Look at Bernie Madoff. I mean, he was heavily regulated. They were in there all the time, supposedly watching him, and he didn't have any money under management. So, I mean, they step on ants and elephants jump over the fence. And I jokingly said when I left, Wall Street, Elizabeth Warren had taken over the last 4 or 5. I turned my business over to my daughter, Hollis, and my team there. So I walked away 2-3 years ago and turned the business over to her in capable hands. She's been with me 7 or 8 years. She's an executive director now at Morgan Stanley and done very, very well. And I kept coming in, every once a week until I realized they didn't need me. It was kind of sad.
Well, I do want to talk some about your column, but do you think, let me ask you a question about something you just said. Do you think all that regulation, you mentioned Elizabeth Warren came in and meddling in the investment business, and then you mentioned Bernie Madoff. Do you think many investors, it gives them a false sense of security? They figure, well, the government's regulating all this, so I don't have to do any due diligence on my own part. I'll just give my money to this person who's promising these great returns, and I'm sure it's got to be on the up and up because government's keeping an eye on everything.
Well, the reason these big corporations often volunteer regulation, and I think you heard Mark Zuckerberg do it before the Senate, saying regulate us. And the reason they like that is because the barrier to entry for a competitor becomes insurmountable, right? So Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, the ones that are left are heavily regulated. But think about it, has there been an upstart investment banking firm in 20 years? There isn't. The compliance, the cost to do it is so high, and they stopped talking about performance for your clients. They moved it to this, have you met your objectives? I was always about performance, doing well, performing for clients, including myself, and it became important to me that I do well, pick the right stocks, and do well for people, and outperform the market. That became nothing they wanted to talk about anymore. Nothing. So the performance suffered. The fees became oligopolistic. People kind of locked their fees in there. And it just became less about the consumer and more about complying to regulation and the demands of Elizabeth Warren or the loudest voice in Congress is what it became. And it wasn't fun anymore. There's absolutely no metric on how well you did for your clients. Even in the Barron's thing, at one time, your performance was a part of it. When I made the Barron's list, and your reputation was a part of it. And that became a metric they took out. So if you're in the investment business, how can your performance not be a metric? for what you're doing, and it was lost under regulations.
Well, so a number of years ago, you took to writing commentary and writing it with a combination of kind of libertarian perspective with, your biting wit and sense of humor, kind of in the style, I think, of P.J. O'Rourke. And what kind of led you to start doing that? And what was kind of the spark? That is something you always wanted to do, or?
Yeah, I always loved PJ's works. I think I met him during your program. You may have had him as a guest speaker.
Yeah.
I certainly met him at Cato events, and he became, an email friend, and he blurred my book, and a good friend. And he was getting up in his career, and he wasn't doing as much. He wasn't doing any column work. So what you found is with humor, right? It's been the sole province of the left, starting from the McCarthy hearings, the writers for TV shows, to Conan, to Jimmy Fallon, to all the left wing, all the left wing writers on Daily Show, for crying out loud. They're all left wing, and their jokes are tired. Trump's fat, Trump's orange. It's just mean, not very creative. And so there was a big void on the right, someone right of center making fun of the left. No one really was doing it. And I'd made enough money where I couldn't be canceled. I'd made enough money, that what are you going to do to me? So I don't work for a big network, et cetera. So I was able to write funny things about the left that others were not willing to do. And I took Trump on to some degree as well. But, most of my stuff was fond to the right of center libertarian views of things. So that's where I did. And I filled a big void there. Quickly, name another funny right of center writer right now.
Yeah, sadly, P.J. O'Rourke passed away and isn't with us anymore. I was tempted to ask you, how you find your material, but then I realized just pick up the paper every day, and there's a lot of material there for you to write about.
Yeah, I was joking about this Trump thing, getting arrested or indictment on classified documents, and so many people have classified documents in D.C. As I think they way overclassify. That makes them seem important. They have so many classified documents. I said in the column or on a radio show yesterday, I said, what important information did they possibly have? Like something like, Joe Biden's nap schedule. What is it that, they could possibly have that's that important, right? So they'll come out, Adam Schiff, if he gets any information and there's a glaring TV light, he'll run to the camera and tell everybody. There's no Senate intelligence. There's not really any secrets anymore. I'm sure the troop movements and things like that are very important during war, and I get that a little bit. But Trump wouldn't. This is clearly a political prosecution, and it's really at the core of what's making Americans mad right now. It's not that they like Trump; it's that they just don't like the government, and he represents the best spearhead, I think, to take on the deep state as we know it today.
So you're saying Senate intelligence is an oxymoron, huh?
Exactly.
The latest column you wrote, while it had a bit of humor, it was also, I think, a very serious and important tribute to the greatest economist of all time, Adam Smith, who in June we observed his 400th birthday.
Exactly.
That was a good column, and you even quietly put in there that you learned some about him at a TFAS program in the summer of '81, which we appreciate.
I'm afraid to out you guys too much because
no, don't worry about that.
Yeah, it's like Caitlyn Jenner, found it easier to come out as a transgender person than as a Republican. But yeah, it informed very much my opinion about economics. I always had a keen interest in economics, but really the way your professors, Professor Dixon, I guess at the time when we were there, really did a great job of illuminating what Adam Smith said, and what he said is timeless. And on the occasion of his 400th, I guess birthday, 300th or 400th, I forget what it was. I just wanted to remind people about that. And about once a year when I get lazy, I'll just basically quote Ayn Rand's money speech for people, which I think is an eloquent way to talk about capitalism for people. I write 52 columns a year, supposedly. So if I'm traveling, I want to take a week off, I had these evergreen columns I put up, and Atlas Shrugged's money speech is one of them. I think the kids need to hear that.
Yeah.
It's really not being taught that in school.
Yeah, thanks for correcting me. I think I misspoke and said Adam Smith's 400th birthday. You're right, 300th anniversary of his birthday.
I'd be mad at you thinking he was that old.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that in your recent column about Smith, it really tied back to your comments about what's happening in the investment business, because he wrote in there, he recognized mercantilism, the businessmen at the time getting together to conspire to, set prices and protect themselves from competition. And what he wrote about 300 or 250 years ago in The Wealth of Nations is exactly what we're seeing in not only in the investment industry. You pointed out that those areas of our life that are most heavily controlled and regulated by government are the ones where we see the highest price increases.
Yeah,
And
healthcare, cable TV,
higher ed.
Yeah, higher ed, college educations. They're going up twice the rate of inflation when the building's been already paid for, and they are a monopoly because you can't create another Harvard, you can't create another University of Tennessee, you can't create another Vanderbilt, right? So it is a monopoly, essentially oligopoly if you think about it. And they call it, those buildings are 100 years old. So it's not like they have a big capital expenditure program to build their buildings. So the only cost is these climbing walls and these professors and administrators that run the cost of education up where it's out of reach for a lot of people. And the liberal indoctrination that they give to people makes people wonder, really question out. And I question often in my columns, why should you pay that for college education? It used to be a article of faith among middle-class people like me that you want your kids to go to college. My parents, but now I think it's okay not to send them. You don't need to run out $40,000-$50,000 a year of student loan debt to read Chaucer and have it interpreted to you by a hairy-legged woman in Birkenstocks who's a leftist. I mean, why do you need to do that? And when you're out, how valuable are you as their employee? What is your skill set, right? Clearly, there's room for arts, a liberal education somewhere. If you got money, it's a nice luxury. But as a practical matter, I think these online or these junior colleges where you actually learn a skill are more valuable than they've ever been.
What your column is carried in large papers like the Orange County Register, and I'm sure in a lot of smaller papers. But do you get much unsolicited feedback from readers? Are they able to contact you? I don't know if you carry your email address with your column.
Yeah, I do. It's good. I like people. Yeah. They're very nice people. It's got a letter today from an older lady said, she had not, thought of Adam Smith in a long time, and she was going to read Wealth of Nations. And yeah, it's nice. I mean, even 90% is positive. A lot of them are professors. It's carried in Chattanooga, so Sewanee University's right up the road, so I get these 8-paragraph letters from Sewanee professors that are, you read them, you don't even know what they really said when they're over with. You can tell they didn't like your column, but they talk in these long prose that they like. I stop reading after 2 paragraphs. Every now and then you'll get one like that, and since it's humor, right? So this is not like some old, like I always tell people there's more truth in humor than there is fact. And something's not funny unless there's a tinge of truth in it, right? So they'll say, well, if I joke about, Biden's nap schedule, someone says, well, he really doesn't have a nap schedule that's classified. Well, of course they don't. It's a joke, right?
Yeah.
So people try to take it literally. And, the humor of these young people, I know you see them all the time. They're so scared to laugh at things these days. They're so scared of, they'll look around the room to see if you can laugh or not. I'm doing stand-up in Florida on Saturday night. It'll be people our age, Roger, that will be there, 40, 50 years and above. Kids are afraid to laugh. I mean, you see with Chappelle and Joe Rogan and things that have happened with humor, and it's not good for the country when you cannot make fun of the powerful and you can't laugh at things, right? And Kevin Hart, his career was almost ruined over comments he made 10, 15 years ago. So I've written about it. It's just not good for the country. Even Bill Maher and other, traditional liberals, including Jerry Seinfeld and others, they said they won't play college campuses anymore. So this young group of people are kind of humorless. They're scared. They're looked around to see what's acceptable to say or laugh at, and the manhood and rough and tumbleness of this generation has been watered down.
Yeah, and no doubt. The impact of the COVID lockdowns have only made it worse with young people.
No doubt. I'm in this YPO group in Atlanta. This the highest ranking Marine in the military. In fact, you should get him to speak to your group. Came in and spoke to us this week, and he said that in the past, for the U.S. Marines, 25% of the country could pass what it took. Only 25% could pass to get what it takes to get in the Marines. Now it's 19% because they're overweight. They're not passing the test. 2 years of lost education. Test scores are down 9%, he said. And this is there's 2 million people in the military and they're not meeting their recruiting goals. And so as a result of laziness, atrophy, cell phones or whatever it is, test scores are down. These are metrics that have held up over time. This is the Marine Corps, an old storied program. And this is a great data point to show, I'm sure higher education masks their poor performance in all the games they play with their tests. But the Marine Corps is a pretty standard deal. It's down 9%, he said, and the recruitment goals are way, way below where they need to be.
Yeah, that's very troubling. Very troubling.
Yeah.
Well, just a few more things I'd like to ask you about before we're out of time. But your career is, well, mostly investment banking. Your work with your column has added a different dimension to it. You've been a well-rounded guy. I'm always amazed at I'll call them celebrities you've gotten to know in your career, whether it's athletes, politicians, or business leaders. A lot of them. And I just wonder, do you have any guidance you'd give to young people, say in our program this summer, about how to, have that kind of career where they can, experience a diversity of experiences like you've had? And
put yourself in situations where you meet these people. B, these kids today say, you ask them to get in touch with somebody. They go, I'll reach out. Reach out means send them a text or send them an email. Call them up. Say, I want to go to lunch. Stuff like that. Do the interpersonal thing. I think the cell phone and the internet has made kids very nervous about just engaging one-on-one with people, right? And and talk about what interests them, not yourself. Kids can be narcissistic. I think we all can, but it seems like this generation with the selfies and all that goes on online, everybody wants to be the influencer, is narcissistic.
Yeah, well, I do think what you said just now is very valid. And, I was thinking today, I need to tell this generation of students to put themselves in situations where they're uncomfortable, where they aren't in a safe space, be willing to be challenged by others' ideas, being around different kinds of people with different experiences, and don't feel threatened by it. Learn from it.
Tell them to take risks too. These kids don't want to take risk at all. And I used to do with my kids. My kids turned out well. 3 kids, doctor, and one took over my business and jobs. My kids have turned out relatively well given the situation. But what I used to do to them is when we had dinner at least once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks. I said, "What are you failed at this week?" And they would kind of talk about,
what did you fail at?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So because meaning you tried, right? And you got to try to make it happen. But what did you fail at? Means what did you try something and fail? Because that's more important usually than success.
Yeah, so many people learn from mistakes, and that so many great entrepreneurs. It's mistake after mistake.
Yeah, there's no shame in that. I'm on a couple of venture capital boards. I always remind people it's the same thing about baseball. You get 300 in baseball, which means you strike out 70% of the time, and you're a Hall of Fame, right? I'm on a couple of venture capital funds. We have 20 companies in our portfolio. We know 10 are going to go zero. We know that. But the 10 that do well will be 3, 5, 6 baggers that will carry the performance of the fund to 20, 30% type of returns. It's just the math of what happens. But you can't be afraid of failure. I mean, that's the main thing. You got to try.
Yeah, well, in fundraising and like in sales, they say you need 9 no's before you get the yes.
Yeah.
And you get 1 or 2 yeses out of 10, you're on your way to success.
And I think your programs in DC, the way you do it with the parties and the dinners and stuff, I think it does open up a lot of social context that they probably don't get in other places. I think fraternities and sororities are good for people.
Yeah, we do lots of events where they can interact with professionals, small groups to big dinners, like you said, where they have that opportunity to. And they have to put themselves out there. They have to walk up to strangers and say, "Hi, I'm a student in the TFAS program this summer. I'd like to introduce myself." And people like that. Professionals like that. So.
And the language can be a lot tighter too. Is using the word amazing every other word, or they use the word literally. I've written about that as well. I mean, using the word like, it's like like every other word is like. If they tighten up their language, I think a lot, and it would be important to them, especially interviewing with older people. It may work with their generational. I tell them family members and friends, just watch your language. Don't use amazing. Everything's not amazing, right? Your Panera sandwich at lunch was not amazing. Childbirth is amazing. So, but and using the word literally and like all the time, and this uptalk thing where everything they say sounds like a question. Now I sound like an old man get off my front yard, but the language is something that should be constant. And this up talking and valley girl talk, and it just means a very smart person. The otherwise very smart people, right? But when your language is imprecise and it's kind of frivolous, I think the older people don't take you as seriously as you should be taken.
Well, Ron, it's literally been amazing to talk to you today. So,
like the best thing I ever done. It's like
yeah, like it is. Yeah. But no, thank you so much. We're proud to have you as a TFAS alum, proud of your support of scholarships for students that has enabled so many students to attend our program who otherwise wouldn't have done so. Congratulations on your success. I've listened to one of your stand-up routines, I guess on YouTube, and you're saying you're doing another one in Florida.
Yeah, going to Florida, and I'll be on the Huckabee show July 15th. We pre-recorded. He's going to go on vacation. Mike Huckabee does a great show, and so we're going to be on there with Steve Penley. Actually, I got my buddy Penley on there, one of the few right of center artists in the country, and we were doing the Huckabee show July 15th weekend, so you get a chance to watch him. He's a good egg.
All right, well, keep at it. Keep getting your humor out there, and because the way things are going in this country, we need to laugh a little bit about it. So,
yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Liberty and Leadership Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, download, like, or share the show on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you like this episode, I ask you to rate and review it. And if you have a comment or question for the show, please drop us an email at podcast@tfas.org. The Liberty and Leadership Podcast is produced at K Global Studios in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Roger Ream, and until next time, show courage in things large and small.